Post-traumatic stress disorder is now recognized as a significant wound of war, but PTSD among many Vietnam veterans, including Gordon Fletcher Howell, went unrecognized for years. His daughter Jessica Jimison shared details with producer Dave Fraser.
He was the youngest of 4 kids and, just very patriotic and, go do the right thing. And so he thought Marine Corps was the way to do that and, be well respected. And it kind of all changed for him at Tet was really the big turning point for him when he described what he developed as cognitive dissonance, coming to understand that, in fact, if he were a Vietnamese person, he would become a Viet Cong, a VC, and hate himself, and that was really hard for him. He was kind of not his normal self when he got home, did not announce that he was home, came home to California, and he was from Arlington, Massachusetts, did not tell his parents that he was back, went out to a bar in California once he got off the base, which I think was San Diego, where he came home to, and went out to a bar knowing that everyone would want to hear what was actually going on in Vietnam. And so he started to share his story, and very quickly, with body language and whatever the verbal language was that he received as feedback, he learned that nobody wanted to hear his story, and that in fact people would much rather have their heads in the sand, and that he, although he could bear witness, it wasn't welcome. I was very attuned to my dad's emotions, both my parents' emotions, but my dad had a much stronger personality than my mom. And the first times I probably remember trying to ask him about, to tell me about Vietnam, I was probably maybe 4 or 5. And what I remember is that he would start to tell me some story from Vietnam, and he would quickly start to tear up. And at that point, the subject needed to change. He couldn't tell me anymore. So from a very, very young age, I knew that there were things that he couldn't share. And I knew that they were painful things. And he was a Marine. Marines don't cry. And so he didn't cry. But he started to, but he wouldn't cry. And so it was, many years later, it was during the first Gulf War, when his PTSD kind of erupted to a degree that I guess had only been previously seen before I was born, which was like full dysfunction. And it became finally obvious that we needed to do something. And he did. That's when he reached out to the VA, and he reached out to Veterans Education Project and the VFW and Veterans for Peace. He kind of reached out in every direction to see what there was, and where would the chips fall for him? Where did he feel supported and like he could make the contribution that he wanted to make to society with his stories, with his experiences. And he ended up with 3 carousels of slides from one of his best Vietnam buddies. And multiple times per week, my dad and I would sit out in the barn, and he would just flip through those slides and cry and tell me the stories. He told me, he finally told me all the stories, and it was incredible bonding. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people in the world who gets to sit with a war vet and feel their pain and feel their passion. And for a person who's so fraught with pain to find peace, getting to be part of that experience for my dad and even for some other people along the journey has been, you can't even describe the magnitude of the blessing. That's the first thing I say when I learn someone's a veteran a war veteran or otherwise, is thank you for your service. So when I hear it, it makes me choke up. And when I say it, it makes me just overflow with gratitude and with emotion, and also with understanding for what that person, some understanding of what that person might be facing in their life, but also what their daughters and sons are facing, and what their wives or girlfriends are facing, and what their communities are facing, and just the isolation that the person might be feeling. And I just always hope that I can reach through that isolation and have that connection for just a moment, and let them know that although they're sacrificing, somebody appreciates it.